ma'am. My name is Aldrin, and for our lessons today is a quadratic equation. So, what is quadratic equation? Quadratic equation is a variable that highest degree is 2. For example, we have example of 4x plus 2, 4x squared plus 2 minus 7 is equal to 0. This is an example of a quadratic equation, because quadratic equation has a highest exponent of degree 2, which is this degree of 2. If you have an example of 3x plus x minus 7 is equal to 0, this is not an example of a quadratic equation. What is the formula of a quadratic equation? How can we do a standard form in quadratic equation? Our standard form for a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So, next is we have also sample of a quadratic equation. Sample of again a quadratic equation is x squared minus 5x plus 3 is equal to 0. Now, as I said, a quadratic equation has three variables, which is a, b, and c. All of these variables must be in real numbers, and a is equal to must not equals to 0. That is a quadratic equation. Let us solve some problems that corresponds to an quadratic equation. First is we have an example of x minus 4 times x minus 3. Is this an example of a quadratic equation? Yes, for this example, we will use the FOIL method. If we use the FOIL method, we can simulate it now and start to have a solution of our quadratic equation, which will be equal to our ax squared bx plus c is equal to 0. How are we going to solve this? We use FOIL method by using the solution of a, b, c, d, which is the a times c plus a times d plus b times c and plus b times d is equal to 0. That's the FOIL method that we will use. Now, so solve. First is x times x, which is the a times c. So our value is x squared. Then next is a times d is x minus is x times negative 3 is negative 3x. Next is negative 4 times x is equal to negative 4x. For this one, this should be positive, because negative times negative is positive. Next is b times d. What is your solution? This is positive 12 is equal to 0. Is this the standard formula already? This is not yet in standard form, because we can also solve this equation for inputting our standard form for quadratic equation. Next is x squared. The answer is x squared minus x plus 12 is equal to 0. Now, let's have another sample. For example, we have x cubed times minus 7x plus 9 is equal to 0. For this one, this is not a quadratic equation. Why? Because our highest exponent is 3. As I have said, your quadratic equation must be only in the highest exponent of 2. Just like this equation. If your highest exponent is 1, 3, and so on, up to 100, that is not a quadratic equation. Now, let's have another sample. How do you determine your values of a, b, and c that are real numbers in a quadratic equation? For example, we have 3x squared minus 7x plus 6 is equal to 0. For this one, you need to know your variables that need to get your standard form. Your example is this one, ax squared. All a, b, and c are real numbers. So everything that stands here in your one quadratic term, so a will be equals to negative 3, and your second term is negative 7, which will be your b, and C is equal to 6. Now you have your standard form. Then let us solve for quadratic equation to solve for quadratic formula. What is our quadratic formula? Our quadratic formula will be x is equal to negative b positive negative square root of b squared plus of minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Now let's have an example for this one. Our example for our quadratic equation is 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. Your first step will be determine your standard form in your variables in a, b, and c. What is your variable in your a? A will be is equal to 2. Your b variable is equal to negative 3 and c is negative 1. How do we solve this problem for quadratic equation? First is we simply simplify this equation what we have get from a and typically solve this equation. For example, this one we have our equation now for a, b, and c, but that are the real numbers. First is x. What is your b? Your b will be negative 3, then positive negative is equal to square root of, what is your b again? Negative 3 raised to 2 minus 4 times a times 2. 1, sorry. All over 2 times a, which is 1. So to solve this, next step is 1 by 1 solving, which is x is equal to negative times negative, it's always positive, is 3, positive negative, square root of 3 squared, which is will be the input of 9 minus 8 all over 2. Next we have, or let's equate this, 9 minus 8, this is equal to 1. Next, we solve this in this form, 3 plus positive negative square root of 1 all over 2. Everything that is solved in square root of 1 is equal to always 1. So we have two signs here, which is the positive and the negative. First is we will solve for the positive side. Solving that will be x is equal to 3 plus 1 over 2. Your sample and answer for positive side is equal to 4 over 2, which is, or simply 2. Oh, 1 half, sorry. Or 0.5. Next, how do we solve the negative sign? First is x is equal to 3 minus 1 all over 2. Or this is equal to 2 over 2, which is equal to 1. Our equation, now we have two answers. Therefore, our equation for this, answer for this one is equal to 0.5 and 1. Now, how do we know if our answer is good? How do we know if our answers are correct? We will just simply put our answers and modify and change this one into our x value. Let's have the example. Is 2 times 1 squared minus 3 times 1 plus 1 is equal to 0. For this checking, we need to know if this equation, quadratic equation, will be also equal to 0. So 1 squared is equal to 1 times 2 is 2 minus 3 times 1 plus 1 is equal to 0. 2 minus 3 plus 1 is 0 is equal to 0. That is for the negative sign. How about we solve for the negative sign? That we have the value 0.5. We will also with to this solution again for the checking. So let's solve 2 times 0.5 squared minus 3 times 0.5.
Okay, teacher.